kind of some foundational principles and things that I've put together over the years from working with my legal and strategy firm clients. And what we figured out kind of works as a framework for getting people through the growth of their company and what you can use in your entrepreneurial journey. So for purposes of this presentation, I'm going to tell a story. And I'm going to act, and I'm going to be Stevie. Stevie is the first employee of Maria and Ramon. So Maria and Ramon have a restaurant, and Stevie was their first employee. So they got to know each other. And the restaurant's called Maria's Meatball House. And so Stevie got to know Maria and Ramon. And anybody ever dealt with a family business? You ever worked through one of those situations? Yeah. You are a family business. Okay. Who's in your family business? My boyfriend and his brother. Okay. So you got two brothers, and then you're the third person. You will be the wife. Okay. You're moving up the ladder. So it will be even more of a family business. Yes. Okay. We have some unique dynamics in a family business, right? I mean, unusual things. And most smaller businesses, you have a lot of relationships going on and things that are developing. So Maria's Meatball House is no different. So for background, this is Ramon. So Maria would describe Ramon. Ramon was a tax accountant before they started the restaurant. And he was very well regarded in his company, and people would come to them and ask for tax advice, and he loved it. But he started finding a passion in the business. So he used to spend his weekends driving the muscle car. Now he gets to spend 24/7 with his wife at the business, growing the business. And that's Maria. Maria was a corporate trainer before they started this business and went on their entrepreneurial journey. Maria was always hosted events and things like that, and she thought that would be a great skill set for a restaurant. She used to spend her weekends at the tennis club, and Ramon would miss her. But now they get to spend all the time together in the business. And so the happy couple began. And then Stevie came in and got to know them through the restaurant. So in fact, that's how it all started. Stevie was working at a local restaurant, and Maria and Ramon came in with their other couples, Valerie's sister and her husband. So that's how they got to know each other. So the restaurant started at that time. So Maria and Ramon, and then Valerie's sister's with Maria, and then you have Kevin and Ramon are good friends. So we have kind of a triangle here, right? Not unlike real life. So we have the two sisters and the husbands know each other. So they came into Stevie's restaurant, a different Italian restaurant in town, and we're having dinner one night, and Maria was complaining about the food. She wasn't real happy with the quality. And so as the conversation evolved, Valerie urged Maria to start her own business because Valerie had been a successful corporate trainer. And she said, if I've been a successful trainer, you could be a successful trainer, right? Anybody kind of get into a business informally like this? Just a conversation starts, and then somehow you end up in business, or an idea leaps off of something, and it goes a direction. Sounds like that's been part of your journey, right? Yeah. Kind of just one day the spark hits, and you start the entrepreneurial journey. And that's kind of the story of Maria and Ramon. They start the business, entrepreneurial, get encouraged to go into business, and they're jumping into it. So Valerie, with her corporate training experience, over dinner, Ramon's like, well, you should be our hostess. You should run the front of the restaurant, make sure everybody's comfortable and enjoying themselves. And Ramon is saying, okay, I agree with that. And then she encourages Ramon to be the chef because he enjoys cooking. So he likes being the chef, he likes cooking. And Valerie agrees that she'll bring her fashion consulting clients to the restaurant so that they can get to know the place and hopefully build the business over time. So we've got a lot of different dynamics going on, different personalities in the business. This is where I'm going to ask you all to help me out. I've drawn up a menu here, a very specialized menu. And in that menu are a variety of things that happen in the years of the business. And so there should be two sheets for each. Yeah, it's 4 years of, so it's 2 sheets per person. Because Maria and Ramon are in love, they agree they'll be equal partners in life and in business. So they decide they'll be a 50% partner. And because Valerie's put the money into the business, she's going to be an equity owner, and she gets 50% of the profits. She doesn't have the time to work in the business, but she has the money to fund the startups. So Valerie funds the startup, and Maria and Ramon decide they're going to work in the business. They don't do much planning because this all comes together over dinner. Stevie volunteers to be their first employee and jumps into the business. And then they start going without much of a plan. And we're going to look at some things that happen in the business, and let's think about what kind of advice and what kind of help they could use at different junctures of the business, and then we're going to work through it as a group. So we've got several people in the room here. So for those of you that are in the room, feel free to pair off and discuss the factual situations, take a little time, have some fun with it. Think about what Maria and Ramon should be doing at each stage of their business journey. For those of you on the webcast, I know you can't pair off as easily, but when we do get to the participation point, I'll ask Maria to take some participants from the webcast too, if you're willing. So feel free to take a few minutes. I'll let you know we have a minute remaining or so, and then we'll all discuss as a group. But pair off with somebody, discuss kind of what you think Maria and Ramon should be doing at these various different stages of the journey. And there's 4 years on that handout, that menu. So look through all 4 years of the business life.
Kind of nailed some of my client work, so I'm just kind of waiting. All right, this looks like. I hate all restaurants. So I think it starts like here.
Yeah, that kind of is And as I told, I know we got to earlier, but we basically some hypothetical to start a business, and we're going to go through some situations while you're about to try different things like this. Okay, that's the idea. Basically.
So right now we're time to
Yeah, go through and think about what this hypothetical. Think about what they should have done and different stages. Obviously, not all of us really have one business at one time. But these are kind of things that could happen.
So, 4 partners in this thing?
4 partners, yes. We have Maria and Ramon work together as husband and wife, and they decided to be equal partners in business. And then their sister Valerie is 50%. Valerie is married to Kevin.
What's Kevin's role?
Kevin's just the husband of Valerie.
Oh, he's not. Because I'm not right. There's no Kevin.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, you'll see later though. Make sure that people let their Kevin matters as it's all going to start showing. He's on the outside, but eventually.
I didn't see this, so that's yes, that's
Yeah. I would say
the same thing. Yeah.
I think 4 people all of a sudden started working together, like, I guess it's 3 now.
Mm-hmm.
2 are married. And 2 are married. Yeah, that's,
So there's that.
first of all, I'd be like, that's totally not gonna work. Because I've done that before. Yeah, certain, like, they were
Cameras are huge in restaurants.
I would say it should be someone's business.
Yeah.
And the other should be like one person's business. And the other should like make some contribution.
Yeah.
It's like if that's anywhere.
So it seems like one of them, my friend, Valerie, is like their only person. Yeah, because they're all happy with it. Or something more happen along the line. It's strange. So I don't know. I feel like there needs to be more talking. So it seems different. This person just Valerie's husband, Kevin.
Actually, they're just getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Valerie probably needs a little.
Right, to talk around it. I feel like they should get free notice. I don't know, there's something really about this. Yeah. This thing. He's like, there's one ahead in line that's good guns.
Yeah.
They know that people get like this.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's some different things that people get.
Yeah.
I'm really trying make me just to the ground. I don't know, or like really we'll see they want to.
Yeah.
So.
That's why I wanted to do.
I think Valerie wanted,
And
a restaurant.
adding healthy options.
and then she got her friends to do the work.
That's all in something.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like some.
I'm maybe just like to new school, but I'm not like this.
Yeah.
Parts of the meals.
Have like a
Right.
consultant,
Yeah.
like a restaurant consultant.
Or, yeah, there's talk to people that own restaurants and things now.
No, it's just
I feel like it's a lot of wasted time. Or networking.
I don't know, I think maybe they should organize some
Like that.
those people.
Yeah.
Like that.
I don't know, the stuff that
Is the point of, like, nowadays, a lot of people has like raise or see, you already have the money. Like, let's say right now.
That's kind of taken away from
Unless Valerie wants to.
So this one,
I don't know, I mean, that.
Yeah, he's like a real manager. like this one where someone, you can get hurt.
Oh, yeah, this, okay, so.
Yeah.
They need insurance.
So, yeah, there's insurance.
What there's no.
The second year,
Somebody else can take over some of this or something.
one of them was so easy.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay.
I guess that sounds alright.
Yeah.
I might be wasting money before you know this. Like, it's something that no one's gonna go to a restaurant that doesn't work.
Well,
What is this? Per student, that's just how I can do here.
So.
Yeah.
You have it already
This
marked.
one, where Kevin was hanging out at the bar.
Or. New hire.
And then there's, and then all of a sudden Kevin owns 50% Maria's.
I think there's a jump there. I don't think
Yeah,
these
it's like
are
2 to 3.
I don't think these are connected. Are they?
Yeah, I think Valerie, yeah, Valerie.
Yeah.
So that's probably, should have been in the partnership.
They should establish.
Yeah.
And how much they're allowed to.
Yeah, this is
cost
just
to
having insurance.
and dinners and stuff.
I don't know.
Because you have to call.
HR, having like an HR system.
Establishing like a max.
Protect, because you need to like protect the
Just
company
giving
Plus, there's no-
against that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take care of HR policy.
Sorry. I'll just keep family. Business.
Yeah, from this example, there's, I wish I probably should have told them, we have a startup on site who, it's a family-run business. It's father and their sons and cousins and a mom who brings up the baby, so kind of, it's like,
It's everybody.
it's the whole family.
Yeah.
But he said, you know, there were concerns about that, and of course, there's advice, but they've been able to really do a good job of,
Yeah.
I mean, it's Valerie's.
having a productive.
Yeah.
That's
You know, it's
what
got
It doesn't always turn into a train wreck, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the family. You know, we'll talk some about it.
I know they have to make some adjustments. We
Yeah.
have the team on site.
Yeah.
So she made almost $1 million.
Maria is. Yeah.
And the other two.
Take about another minute or two, and it's not important if you finish all, because we'll work through it as a group.
Yeah, I would just.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, rather than like,
Yeah.
or like, or service industry,
Yeah.
rather than
I
like.
think it's, they're like very,
Their
it's
access
like, yeah,
to
it's
it.
just all, it's all online, it's all.
I feel like that's
It's
kind of
order,
like
yeah.
the traditional couple
So I
system,
guess
like,
when.
Yeah.
He's works amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, the difference is like over time, there's always stress that is.
Yeah.
So like, once the couples are really good at communicating.
Exactly.
Just like,
those are totally, because you know, there are like reasons as a tangent, there's a lot of. Sure. It's like Walmart's thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll put them on. We'll put it on both.
Someone should get
Get a little cross marketing going there. Okay, let's take a few minutes to discuss, and hopefully those of you on the webinar are there. So feel free to chime in. Stuff here in the room, a lot of different discussions going on, picking up pieces of what everybody was saying. So there were a lot of interesting ideas. Who had a situation? Or one focus? Sure. What's your name?
Jay.
Hey, Jack. All right.
I thought it was risky just to right away buy a restaurant space
Okay.
without testing any sort of idea of like people want meatballs as a,
Okay. So
and if you can make a business out of it, business kind of part of it. Maybe that just does up new school.
okay. So just for the benefit of those on the webinar, in case they can't hear, but Jay was saying that he didn't like the idea that they just jumped in and leased the space. They didn't test the concept. They just kind of ran right into the business immediately. You didn't know whether people like meatballs or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And these are new restaurant owners. They don't know whether they like the restaurant industry or not, right? So we had a lot of that. And I did catch you say a little bit about business plans. What's your thoughts on business plans?
I mean, this is a controversial thing. I personally don't think they're valuable for early stage companies.
Yeah.
I think the value in them is when you have to raise money, and it's
Right.
a necessary thing to do.
Sure.
And it forces you to think and plan, but I just don't think it's useful for their time to do it
Yep.
right now.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. You and I will have a little different view on it, but I think planning is dynamic. I think a lot of people get locked into plan and they say, oh, I've got a plan, now I've got to do the plan. I think you need to view it as dynamic, right? You have a plan for the time being, but you're going to evolve it, particularly in the earliest stages of the company. If you're brand new, you're probably going to change a lot of it.
Yeah.
If you're a little more mature, you're probably going to follow your plan a little bit closer, particularly once the investors get in, because they'll probably push you to follow your plan once they put their dollars in there.
Yeah.
But
My point though was they already have the money, so why not?
they got the money. They didn't need an investor, but they just jumped in and leased the space without really realizing what a restaurant was or some of the complications of a restaurant. So I think that's a very, very valid point.
I think it also depends on the industry. So for something like this where there's, it's a restaurant, this is something that there's a history of. They're not, like with your startup, y'all are doing something that no one's doing right now. So you're going to have to do lots of pivots, and whatever business plan you create is not going to be used probably a month from now. But for them, they can use the kind of experiences of other people and the knowledge that's already out there to create something new.
Right. They probably could have benefited greatly if they checked in with some other restaurant owners, find somebody that's non-competitive. They're opening an Italian restaurant in this particular town. If they go to a different town and talk to somebody who's got a different type of restaurant, or go to the same town and talk to somebody who's got an American style food restaurant, maybe they could learn some stuff right there, and that would be a good kickoff. And whether they have a formal written plan, they need to at least have a concept of what they're doing. I mean, they went out and leased space, right? So they had some plan somewhere, and it was a plan.
Yeah.
And that's just a side note I always make with people is, particularly when we have multiple owners in a business, the written plan is good for getting the owners on the same page. Because in my experience, in my law firm, a lot of times people will get into a business, the business will start moving forward, and at some point, the 2 owners or 3 owners start to disagree. And what they figure out is when they had that initial conversation and said, we're going to grow the business, One thought that was, we're going to grow the business and we're going to do an IPO 10 years from now. The other one thought we're going to grow the business and sell it in 3 years. And the other one thought we were going to grow the business and make a lifestyle company.
Mhm.
And they didn't realize in the back of their heads that they had different concepts. They're all like, oh yeah, we're going to grow the business. And they don't fully flush out where they're going. So a lot of times putting things in writing, query how much detail you should put in. I mean, maybe you don't do a 50-page or 100-page plan, but putting some of the things in writing gets all the owners on the same page.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that takes away all that in the head stuff that they may just be assuming if you actually see it in writing. Because a lot of times when people stop and do that, the other partner reads it and they go, what are you talking about? I wasn't thinking that, I was thinking this. And better get those issues out first. I've had partners come to me to form companies, and after we had kind of the initial discussion of how you're going to run the business, divide the profits, all this, they leave my office and I get a call later and they say, we don't want to be partners with each other. And that's okay. I mean, as a lawyer, I don't want to stop anybody from having a business. I want people to be successful. But if you're so far apart from your partner that you can't have a discussion and agree on what the business is, you're just a train wreck waiting to happen, and you can avoid that sooner than later. Okay, that's a very valid point. Who had a situation in year 2? Situation in year 2 that you liked? One of the dramas that you thought might be interesting.
We talked about the week.
What's your name, by the way?
Corey.
Corey. Hey, Corey. All right.
So you compared that, we were discussing there's IP involved with that.
Yeah.
Compared that to like Coca-Cola recipe, how
Yes.
believe that's protected in some way.
And do you know the history of the Coca-Cola recipe and how they protect it?
I heard it recently.
Okay.
Where 2 people have the recipe
Yes.
and they're not allowed to be on a plane at the same time.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Coca-Cola, my understanding is the way they did it was trade secrets. So you have a couple of choices. You can go patent, you can file for a patent and protect your IP that way. And that's the way a lot of people encourage people to do patents. But way back when they first came out, Coca-Cola, the concern was, well, if you file for the patent, you have to publicly disclose what the formula is. So it's protected, but you'd have to publicly disclose it so other people could make similar ones, or somebody could just outright copy it and say, come sue me. So they made the business decision 100+ years ago that they would use trade secrets. So they just have a very limited number of people that actually know the entire formula. And so those limited number of people, and I don't know the details. That sounds very reasonable to me, though. But you only have a handful. I understand there's only a handful of people that actually know the full formula. So you would obviously then separate them. I do know companies that when they're traveling, you'll tell executives, you don't want more than like 2 or 3 of your executives on the same flight. So if you have all your management team going to a conference, you might separate them on different flights just in case. So I mean, there's some piece of that there too. So it might be happening. It might make sense. So what's your thought on leaking the formula, or Corey, what were you thinking as far as what could they have done?
I mean, they probably should have thought about that before it was leaked. I think a lot
Right.
of this is hindsight.
Yeah.
But I think there's such a small business. I don't think I wouldn't have thought that would make sense on a meatball recipe.
Right.
So I guess a secret would have made more sense. Like,
Yeah.
For the stuff that you want to rely on your cooks to be able to make it. Everyone doesn't want to be
Right.
all the time making the same
Yeah.
recipe.
And I have a friend in Dallas, and she has a cake. She makes cakes, but for some of the cakes, she's the only one that knows what all the exact ingredients are. She has her employees there, and they'll work with the batter, and they'll form the cake, and they'll cook it and all. But she's the only one that knows all the exact ingredients that go in there. So kind of on that Coca-Cola idea, right? Like you've got lots of employees in Coca-Cola, but only a couple people know exactly how to mix everything.
I think it also ties back to your earlier point. If their dreams are franchising this and getting a special meatball house all over the country, then
Right.
it's probably more important. If you just want one restaurant in a specialized town, there's other ways to make your restaurant.
Yeah, it depends on how central that recipe is, right? If you think you have a really unique meatball and everybody's coming for the meatballs, and that's your attraction, then you're going to want to really protect that. If they're just coming because they want to have an Italian dinner in town, that meatball recipe may not be as critical. So, you're always thinking about what's the business. A lot of trade secrets, a lot of things, but some are more valuable than others. Some are more central. All right, year 3. Anybody have something in year 3 you thought was particularly interesting?
A lot of drama.
A lot of drama. Well, this is a very dramatic business, yes. It's an extreme example to get thinking about different scenarios, but
The conflict.
what's that?
Addressing the free drinks and dinners and
Yes.
Like I was just saying, establish daily comps and minimums and maximums, because every restaurant gives stuff out. But
Right.
to avoid giving the house away, just establish, what shift is allowed, how much to give out and whatnot, try to keep track of it. Because if you don't give anything, your staff is still gonna give stuff away.
Right.
If you give a comp list, then more than likely stay within those boundaries.
Okay. So setting some boundaries, some operating procedures here. Again, I think part of that conflict was just the personalities, and they started to have some interpersonal conflict, and it starts
Right.
pushing into the business, right? You start having some problems outside of the business, and then people push it into the business because the business plan wasn't as clear. The couple start arguing among themselves, and next thing you know, it's reflected in the business, right? They're not happy about how one person's giving out comps or doing whatever because of some conflicts. So again, that's things. Again, we can disagree on how much to plan, but to have some parameters up front of we're going to bring potential clients or potential long-term patrons to the restaurant, that's good, and we're going to give them some comps, but how much do we do, and is it really helping the future patrons, or is it giving drinks to your buddies? Are you using it judiciously, and were there limits on it? So yeah, a lot of this stuff comes to upfront understandings. All right, how about year 4? You're not touching it? Something in there interesting too?
I mean, I hope they knew from the get-go that this was inevitable. Or
Okay.
at least know it's a possibility.
Right.
Just from starting, someone said hey, business is stressful,
Yeah.
This could have, there's gonna be strains down the road.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you should know that going into a business, right?
Yeah.
Business is going to change your life in probably ways that you can't fully plan. I mean, everybody in this room has been on the entrepreneurial journey enough to know that, right? You don't know exactly what stresses and pulls, and you don't know when things are going to happen in your business and what that's going to mean for your journey. That's something everybody needs to know is, there's going to be unknown changes. But the interesting thing I found in my legal practice is when I'm sitting at my office and people show up to get an LLC agreement set up or a partnership agreement, I will say to them, well, what if you end up in a disagreement with your partner? What if you want to go a different direction? Reply, me and my partner are different. We never disagree with each other. We've known each other for 20 years. We're great friends. We went to kindergarten together, and we've been friends ever since. We've never been in an argument. And then 4 years later, those same people call me back and say, hey, I got in an argument with my buddy, and now I'm not happy with how he's running the business, One partner called me up at one point, and he's like, this guy, and now his personality completely changed. He's like, it's like the reality show, who the bleep did I marry, right? I thought I went in business with one guy, now I'm in business with somebody completely different. But that's just a reality, and I tell people plan for the inevitable changes. So life is going to change. I mean, I've had people come in, I had a partnership consisting of 2 guys, married, and the business, they were running their day jobs and they were running this business at night. Started to get off the ground. They're starting to make money.
Married to each other or married to?
No, married to different women. Business starts to get off the ground. It's doing pretty good, making a nice little side income. So one partner's like, this is cool. Let's make this our full-time job. Let's quit our day jobs and let's build the business. Oh, I like my day job. Let me stick around here. And so they're still working days and nights while they're having this discussion. And long about the same time, both of their wives come to them and say, you're working too many hours, right? You're working a day job, you're working a night job, you're never at home, or you're at home in the basement, typing on the computer. Tension. And the one partner says, I love this business. This is my passion. I want to go work full time. I'll get a divorce. And he gets a divorce. Like, my business is more important than my wife, right? And the other guy, says, oh, you're right, honey. I'm working too many hours. And they're 50-50 partners. They're dividing the profits 50-50. One wants to work tons of hours, and he starts working more hours, and one guy works less hours. And so what do you think's happening here? I mean, what do you think's happening within that partnership?
Attention.
Tension. they're not getting along real well, right? I mean, because the one's looking over the other guy's shoulder and saying, why aren't you working more hours? Why are you fluffing? And the other guy's saying, oh, I gotta be with my family. Why are you being so business driven? In their partnership agreement, they go pull it, they'd written the partnership agreement before they came to me. The agreement said, if we get in a disagreement, one of us can buy out the other. Didn't say for how much, didn't say how that buyout would be conducted, just said one of us can buy out the other. So they've been stuck like this for about 1.5 years now. And that business is still going, and they're still in the same spot. One wants to work a lot, one doesn't want to work a lot, and they're constantly arguing about how many hours they're working. But the fundamental thing was they didn't take into account the fact the business could evolve. They didn't say, oh, my family needs are going to change, or my hours are going to change, or we're going to have a different view on who's going to grow this business. They didn't build flexibility into their plans or their concept to say we're going to change. And that's a key fundamental thing. A lot of these ones are something's going to change. We don't know what. We don't know who's going to have an affair with the bartender. We don't know. We don't know who's going to give away free drinks. What we do know is life is going to change and business is going to change. And so that's kind of one of the underlying principles. So it's an interesting exercise to get you thinking, right? So Maria and Ramon had a plan. They had a vision. But were they empowered? I mean, did they live their dreams? And I think the results say no, right? They just didn't get there. When people start these businesses, they're in love with their business partner. They think everything's great. They have a great idea, and they're ready to move forward. But at some point, life tests it, right? There's going to be disruptions. Problems are going to happen. You're going to get tested on your business plan. And that's the real question. Do you have things that are going to work? And I've seen great businesses. I've seen lousy businesses over the years with my law firm and now my strategy firm. People come to me and we work on their business, and some will do wildly successful things and some don't do very well, or they fail. And the differences between them are often subtle, but they're clear. And it comes down to some of these planning and these foresight aspects that we'll be talking about today. Anybody here remember the movie Social Network? One about the Facebook founders? Famous scene in there. Mark Zuckerberg sitting there typing on his computer at the Facebook headquarters. Big sliding glass door opens. Eduardo Saverin, who had been an early investor in Facebook, comes storming in. You remember this scene, right? Comes storming in. He slams Zuckerberg's laptop closed, and he says, what did you do to me? What's happened here? Why did you dilute me? Why did you make my ownership percentage smaller? And Zuckerberg, at the same time had brought in new investors. Eduardo Saverin, who was one of the first guys in, ends up having a very small interest. Zuckerberg and the other board members on the inside didn't dilute their own shares. And so Saverin's very upset. And he's asking Zuckerberg a lot of questions. And Zuckerberg finally replies to him, you are our operations officer. You didn't protect yourself. You didn't do the things you needed to do to make sure that your ownership interest was protected. Basically, you're the odd man out. And, Saverin still made money. He still walked away with $400 million or something out of the deal. But he could have had billions. That's a lot of money, right? You make that kind of move on Maria's meatball house and you walk out the door with $36, right? So we need to protect ourselves, and we need to do things to make sure that we're protected. And it's not just big businesses, right? I mean, how do we think Eduardo Saverin's feeling at this point? I mean, he goes in early, he finds a Facebook, he gets in early, and then he finds out that he lost his investment. He didn't get what he thought he was going to get. Right? He's probably angry. Probably ready to attack them. And I've seen it in smaller scale. Years ago, before I started my own law firm, I worked for a large law firm. But one particular large law firm had some internal fighting among the partners, ended up going out of business. And on a particular day, they called us into a conference room, and they told me and a bunch of secretaries and other people that they would be closing in 1 month. And so, lawyers don't get paid. Everybody thinks that's great. There's secretaries and administrative staff that are sitting there that just lost their job on 1 month's notice. Some of them have been there for 28 years. Right? So there's a greater responsibility here. These partnership agreements, these things affect other people. And it's not just Eduardo Saverin and Mark Zuckerberg fighting over millions of dollars on Facebook. These partnership agreements can affect real people. And I came out of it fine. I moved to another big law firm. started finding my way, and then I later became an entrepreneur, built my own business, and it helped move my life the right direction. It was a good thing in retrospect for me. But I'm sure for a lot of those secretaries and other people it wasn't. So we got to try to do things to avoid the plans, avoid these problems before they happen. And so that's why, as I've analyzed businesses and worked with businesses over years, I've tried to come up with some principles and ideas to figure out how we're going to move businesses through these lifestyles. How can we get them to the right place? So everybody here have income or wealth you want to protect? Yeah. Probably, have you thought about partners? Been in partnerships, been married, been with other people? Yeah. So you've got things that you have to deal with, right? You probably want to protect your personal assets. Yeah. Probably think most lawyers are boring. But seriously, we have these fundamental ideas. We want to be successful. We want to protect ourselves. We want to move through things. And that's why I came up with the 3 laws of empowerment. We'll talk some about them today and what they are and what they mean and how they can help you. And the 3 laws are this. Number 1, preparing. Understanding that you can be successful and you can build your path to success. But you have to have some fundamental skills and you have to lay the foundation. You have to start yourself the right direction. Number 2 is planning. We won't get into great detail about plans today. Some people are going to plan more than others. But if you're going to be successful, you have to know where you are and where you want to be and how you're going to connect the dots. Whether that's in your head, whether that's in a 100-page written legal document, you, your partners, the people involved in your business need to know where you're getting and how you're getting there. And then the third piece of it is protection. Make sure you get what's fair and right. Eduardo Saverin didn't get what he is entitled to. I've had partners come to me that worked in a business for 5 years, got in a fight with their partners, and then they got sent out of the business and didn't get a check because they didn't protect themselves. They didn't build those structures in place. So I like to run people through the 3 elements as we're analyzing their business to make sure that we're building the right things. These are ideas that keep you grounded and secure, like laws of gravity. They keep you down there. And they give you the strength and the vision, the wisdom to get where you're going. So let's look at the law of preparation. We're in a unique time right now, and I think based on this room, I think you people we figured it out. We get to choose what we do with our days, right? People that came before us didn't have that luxury. Our grandparents often grew up in certain towns, they had certain industries, they had their family there. Very hard to make a break and do something different. Didn't have that luxury of choice. We've got that now, right? We can choose how we want to build our careers and our lives. And we can use that to get us to where we want to be. But we have to know that we have that choice. And I think everybody here probably knows that we have those choices in our life. And my business card says R. Shawn McBride, attorney at law. But I really want to say R. Shawn McBride, liberator of the heroic spirit of business. I want to build businesses. I want people to be successful and get where they're going. And we all have that power to do what we want to do. We just have to know that we can, and we have to start working on a path to that, which is where the planning comes in. What I call the second law. How do we make a plan that works? How do we build something, right? And that's laying the foundation. The plan is the foundation. And when you do the preparation and you make the plan, chances of success become astronomically high. I have a friend and fellow author named Ann Bruce, and she wrote a book called Discover True North. In her book, she says, you can be anything you're capable of being. Think about that for a second. You can't be anything you want to be. You can be anything you're capable of being. So we have certain fundamental skills. We have certain things that we're naturally good at. And we can be anything that those skills allow us to be. We get to choose our path from that point forward. But we have to do difficult things when we're planning. And one thing that I encourage and counsel all of my clients to do when they come to me to set up a plan is we deal with the difficult things up front. And one thing I'll always run my clients through is what I call the 4 Ds. And we're going to run through them here in a minute. Maria and Ramon had 3 of the 4 Ds happen to them. So see if you can spot those in there. Number 1, death. 100% inevitable, right? All of us are going to die at some point. Our business partners might die. People that we're engaged in transactions with might die. What is our plan? How are we going to keep that business moving forward if somebody, unfortunately, is not there in the future? Number 2, another sad one, disability, right? Bad things happen to good people. And disability will often put more stress on the business than a death. Because not only is that person no longer there helping the business, contributing whatever unique skills they have, that person probably has income needs and healthcare issues. So we need to have a plan in case that partner becomes disabled. What if your partner's not there to do what they were set to do? And now they still want a paycheck because they've got medical needs. Can we get insurance? Can we do other things? What plan do we have in place to keep that business moving forward? Because that's what I'm trying to do, is protect that value. Number 3, divorce. We saw that with Maria and Ramon. Particularly prevalent here in Texas, community property state, right? So you have a married person involved in your partnership. Typically, that ownership interest in that partnership is going to be a piece of community property. So if they get a divorce, you've got a new partner because the ex-spouse becomes a partner. And I can tell you some stories from my legal experience where we've had some very interesting situations come up because an ex-spouse became a partner. And number 4, disagreement, right? You know, reality TV, right? But we're not Kardashians. You know, we're real people. We've got real lives. TV show. And we need to have a way to figure out what we're going to do if we get in a disagreement with our partner. The Ferretta brothers that formed the UFC organization, $4 million when they bought it, $2 billion when they exited, or did I get those numbers flipped, right? But they from millions to billions. They had an interesting disagreement provision. Their partnership agreement provided that if they got in a disagreement, they would have a cage match, and the winner would get to make the decision for the partnership. Yeah. Most of us probably need something more realistic than that, right? We need some way to move the business forward without ending up paralyzed. And we see businesses get in that. You liking this cage match idea?
Yeah, I like it.
We can write it.
I might adopt that.
Yeah. I had a friend that was a similar transactional lawyer like myself. And he had these partners come in there and they kept running through the what if we disagree, what if we disagree. There's a lot of different ways you can work that out. And this guy came up with, they decided they would have a coin flip. Then the problem became, as a lawyer, how do you write a coin flip provision? Who flips the coin? How high does the coin get flipped? What if it ends up on its edge? And they ended up writing like a 3-page procedure on how you would flip a coin. So the guy's sitting there like reviewing, he's watching the NFL with the coin toss at the beginning, and he's like writing down notes, and he's writing. But you have to have some procedure to break a deadlock, right? You want to keep that business moving forward. And you probably need to involve other people in your plan. You know, very few people are going to be successful in business on their own. And for a lot of my clients, that's their biggest struggle, is bringing in that first group of people. But if you look at who's been the most successful, all these people have supporters, right? They have people that are behind them that are helping them achieve their greatness. You know, the Richard Bransons of the world, the Zuckerbergs of the world, they've all got people behind them that are doing things to help them be greater. And so you're going to need that in your business sooner or later on a different scale. So if you prepare and you plan, now you're building something that can really make you successful. And that's where you have to protect, the third law. How do you protect yourself? And what do you do? And that really comes down to negotiations and understanding. You need to be talking to your business partners, discussing how you're going to get from where you are to where you're going to be, and what procedures are there. Do you have the dilution protections that Eduardo Saverin didn't negotiate for? Have you built the things in there to deal with insurance if a disability event or other things happen? How are you building things in place to make sure that your investment, your time and effort is going to be fairly rewarded? A lot of different ways to do it, but it's something you definitely want to focus on. I think we all agree that Eduardo Saverin probably wasn't very happy about his investment in Facebook. What could he have done differently? Like Zuckerberg said, you didn't protect yourself. Front for an anti-dilution provision, this whole thing would have never happened if he had done the right thing in the beginning. And of course, if he had had a conversation with Zuckerberg and understood where they each were, you know, because it sounds like that was something, again, they didn't discuss it. They both had different concepts of how that should work. So, you know, Stevie, back in our original example, our little friend who was in business, you know, he's in a position where he can potentially buy out a business. You know, he can go out and bring investors in and possibly take over the Maria and Ramon situation. He's positioned, if he's taking the right steps to protect himself. Can he go get some investors? You know, Ramon wants to sell the business. There's something where somebody who's got some foresight, as watching this train wreck happen, might be able to do things to protect himself. He might be able to go get some investors and take that business over. right? But you got to be constantly looking ahead, thinking about how can things play out and how do I make sure I'm moving forward. Right? We're not the only ones using conscious business planning. I mean, the most successful companies in the world are already doing the kind of things we're talking about in different terms, but they're preparing themselves, they're planning, and they're protecting, right? And if you look at the Googles, the Southwest Airlines Container Store, Panera Bread, Amazon.com, they've all got systems in place. They're all protecting themselves. They've all built their businesses up, and they've done these things, right? And they're successful businesses, but they're also doing the kinds of things that we're talking about doing to make themselves successful. You've really got two choices in this game, right? You can prepare and plan, or you can go out and get in business with somebody like Ramon. And frustration isn't fun, right? None of us want to be frustrated. None of us want to be upset, right? We've all seen the warped wall at the American Ninja, right? We don't want to be that. We don't want to be there. So I encourage you to use the 3 laws of empowerment in your business. I mean, think about things, break them down in these terms. It's a very simple premise, right? 3 stages. And you're going to move back and forth among the 3 stages as you're evolving your business. But where am I at myself? Am I executing on the plan? And am I protected if that plan comes together? As things start to happen, am I protected? Where am I? So you can constantly use this framework. This is something you can use regularly as you're doing your planning, as your business is evolving. Bring it in there. Think in terms of where am I going to be, right? I want you to get the monkey off your back. You know what's funny? I mean, that little guy's sitting on my shoulder, but he's got his hand in my pocket, and he's got me in a stranglehold, right? I don't want this happening to other people. I want everybody to be successful and to get where they want to go. Abraham Lincoln told us over 150 years ago that the key to success is preparation. And that still holds true today. I hope the 3 laws of empowerment can help you get there. If I can help you or anybody else on your path of empowerment, let me know how. Thank you. I'm here for questions. That help you a little? I know you got a lot of planning to do.
I do.
You're early in the planning process. Yeah. Jay's still not going to plan, right?
No, I mean, I think what I was more saying is just like writing a 50-page plan.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
The plan, it's definitely important to plan for other people and things. And
I think
getting it on paper,